Alright, welcome back to MessyGarage. Today we're going to be fixing the oil filter housing gasket on my F30. This is my F30. Just a little bit of background. These cars are known to have this kind of a failure. This car's only got 64,000 miles on it, and it is going bad on this one. What happens is oil starts dripping out of the oil cooler and the oil filter housing gasket, and it drips down onto the belts on the front of the car. What happens then is the belts get really slippery, they slip off, and the front of the engine just kind of shreds the belt. Happened earlier on my E90 when my son was driving it, and it's starting to happen now on this one, so we're going to change them out today. I've got both the gaskets here that I've already purchased, and I will show you the part numbers if it focuses. There's that one. That is the oil filter housing gasket. It looks like this. The other one is the oil cooler gasket, and it looks like that. So these two parts are going to be right here. This is the oil cooler. There's a gasket that goes right here in between this, which is the oil filter housing, and that, and then the oil filter housing gasket is going to go between the engine and the oil filter housing. So first thing we need to do is we need to take some bits off this car. We got to remove the plastic cover. We're going to have to remove the air intake. I've got an engine air intake, but if you got the one stock from the company or any other aftermarkets, it may be a little bit different for you. This is just pulling up. There's four little nubs that hold it in place, so we'll be taking that off, and then I'll be removing some parts in here, and I'll walk you all through that. It's gonna be messy. The job looks like it should be pretty straightforward. It's just kind of a pain in the ass catching all of the oil, and then you're gonna have some of the coolant coming out. So it's gonna be a messy job, but we'll get through it. Another thing you're going to have to probably, I'm going to try not to do this, but I think you're going to have to remove the intake manifold and move it away just to get to one of the bolts that's on here. Otherwise it should be an easy job. That manifold being in the way and the mess of the coolant and the oil coming out is going to make it kind of suck. But it needs to be done, or else we could have some problems. So let me get the camera set up and then we'll get started. Alright, first thing I'm going to remove is the air intake. And on this one, gotta take a few things off. So I'm going to loosen up these first. Set that aside. So let's so we've got the cone filter off. We've got the sensor off here in the front. I'm going to pop this engine cover off. There's four little nubs holding it, and you just pull up on each end. Set that aside. A little bit more room. Okay. I'm trying to be careful with this because all these plastic bits can snap pretty easily. There it goes. Supposed to be able just to push on here and let's go with the clips, and then you can pop it off, but it's not always that easy. Let's get that out of the way. Alright, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up this air intake. I'm going to put a baggie over it for now. That way nothing gets in there, falls in, and we should be okay with that. A couple things I did, and I didn't have the camera on, which really sucks ass, but I took a T30. There's a bolt right here. Took that bolt out from the top of the oil cooler, and then put the oil cooler line, or the oil lines down, and I am catching as much of the oil as I can in this Tropicana bottle bottom that I cut off. So it's kind of messy. It comes out pretty quick when you pull these lines off, so just be aware of that. Clean these up as best I can. So the bolt's going to be quite long. Looks like this, and it sits right in here. So that's what I took out. Goes right through there, as you'll see. And be careful because there is a washer on it, so don't drop that when you pull it out. So I'm going to let that drip a little bit. On the oil cooler, there are 3 bolts. One here, and then one underneath. So we are going to remove those. I've already broken them loose. And this might be seized on a little bit with all the time and heating and cooling in the gasket back there, but just give it a couple taps and it'll come off. Mine's coming off pretty easy. And I'll set that aside. Quite a mess down here. Most of the oil already dripped out, but we're going to clean that up in a little bit. Now, there are 3 bolts holding the oil filter housing on. There's one down here that I've already cracked loose. There's one on top, and there's one back here that you can't get to until you loosen up the manifold here, and I'll show you how to do that. Now is as good a time as any to get the oil filter out and let that drain a little bit. What you want to do, I just use a strap wrench. Set that aside. I'm going to pull the oil filter out and put it in this Tropicana container that I've been using to put oil in that was leaking out. So this is obviously not a clean job. There's oil pulled in here. I'm going to try to clean as much of that out as you can. The more you can clean out, the less you're going to have dripping all over the place. So you've got 7 fasteners that hold the manifold on. What I want to do is get behind here. In order to do that, we're going to need to get this foam out of the way. This is just sits on top of the engine, so you got to kind of coax it off. Now we should have access to all 7 bolts, or better access to them, I should say. A lot of wires and everything running through here, but the concept is to get these bolts off. Like I said, it keeps saying there's 7 of them, and then pull the manifold away a little bit just so we can get this bolt down here. I'll show you the bolt. So the bolt we're trying to get to is right behind the oil pressure switch, or sensor, or switch actually rather. It's right here where my finger is. Can't get to it without the manifold out of the way. So that's what I'm going to do next. Take those fasteners off, pull the manifold back. What I suggest best you do is get it out so far and then use a magnet tool, pull the rest of it off, set those aside, and we'll do the other 6 off camera. So I'm doing now, I took the 7 fasteners off, and 4 of them were actual nuts, and then there are studs that look like this that are in the head. I'm taking an E7 and removing those studs just so it makes it easier to take everything and slide it all over. Because all we need to do is we need to slide it over. We don't need to actually get it off. Just want to get it out of the way so we can get to that bolt. And as you're doing this, it's not a bad idea to take a magnetic tool to just grab the stud. I also use this on the nuts too when I was taking those out. So we'll do the rest of that and I'll shift the manifold over. Alright, so what I had to do, I had to take, looks like there was 5 of these studs altogether. I misspoke earlier and said 4. There was 5 of these studs. I took them all off. Was able to get the intake manifold over enough to get the bolt off. And the bolt is right here. I'll try to point to it with a screwdriver. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it's right here. So I had to come through this area, and that's the bolt. So I got that one off, and I'm going to take this top one off here. Now these are different size bolts, so keep track of where they are and where they go. And there's one more, but before I do that, I think I am gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna take this coolant hose off. It might be a mess, so I want to get that off before I actually remove everything else. So just hold on. Now for this, luckily I still have recycling to take out, so I'm going to use a chopped up 2-liter bottle. To get under this clip here, I should have done this before I removed that, because now it's getting everywhere. Alright, pull that clip out, and then I'm going to work I'm going to put this actually back in to kind of secure this for the time being. Alright, so this took a little coaxing to get off. I drained what little coolant there was in the car. I haven't driven this car for a week or so, and all the squeezing and wiggling I think might have gotten most of the coolant back in, which is maybe a blessing in disguise. So I've got the hard bolt to get out. That was this one. It's a medium size bolt, medium length rather. The one down here at the bottom is the shorter bolt. And then the bolt up here is the longer one. So keep those separate. Keep in mind for when you're trying to reinstall it. So once you have those bolts, there should be nothing holding this on anymore. And okay, so I've cleaned this up a little bit. Now I'm going to take a pick tool and I'm going to carefully try to get the gasket to start coming out. Hopefully not in pieces. This one seems pretty brittle. So that is going to be one out of the way. I'm going to try to clean up where this sits down in there. Make sure there's nothing left in the grooves, because we want to put the new one in. We want to make sure it seals up really good. This one's a lot more pliable, as you can see. This one's actually pretty brittle, and it broke in one part already. So, and just gotta figure out which way it goes. Lay it in there. And I opted for the genuine BMW ones. I know there's cheaper ones on Amazon and probably eBay, but this job's kind of a pain in the butt getting to everything, so I didn't want to risk it. And they're not horribly expensive. Alright, so I'm going to finish getting this one off. You don't need to watch that. Same procedure. And then we're going to start putting it back together again. I cleaned it up a little bit with brake cleaner. I'll clean it up a little bit more. And I'll also clean up the oil cooler. And then we'll start with the reinstall. Okay, so here we are back in the engine bay. And I'm going to start reinstalling this part. I'm going to start off with the most problematic bolt. So I'm going to get that started in here, and then when I made it up, I'm going to start getting this, try to get this started. Tuck that out of the way. Bolt in hand tight. Top one is the longer one. And then the shorter one. Not a whole lot of room with that one. So let's get it started by hand, and then we'll ratchet it back on. Alright. So I'll do this off camera. Once I get that done, I'll start working on the reinstallation of the intake manifold. I got the studs back in. I got some of the bolts started on the intake manifold. I'm going to tighten these all up. I'm also going to put this coolant line back on. Grab a little clip. There you go. Should be able just to move that in position. Clip it back down. Alright, that's nice and secure. So that part's done. I think most of the dirty work is done right now. So what I'm going to do off camera, just so I don't bore you guys any more than I already am, I'm going to finish up tightening up the manifold. We're going to put the studs back in. These bolts are going to be tightened up to 12 foot-pounds. And I think then it's just a matter of putting the oil cooler back on, reattaching the lines and the intake. So let me get some of this stuff done off camera so the video is not too long. Thanks. Alright, now it's time for the oil cooler. We're going to put this back on with the 3 bolts that we took it off with. And I'm just going to put a little oil on this gasket. Alright, these bolts get torqued down to 16 foot-pounds. Alright, then we need to reattach the oil lines. So plug those in there. That's in there good and tight. Engine's still a little greasy, but it's better than it was. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hit this with a little bit more degreaser. Then I'm going to put my air intake back on, reattach the sensor and the vacuum line, and then I'm going to run it and make sure I don't have any leaks before I actually take it anywhere. I've lost some coolant and we've lost some oil, so we're going to have to fill those up. And I can't forget there's no oil filter in there yet. So I'm going to take care of all this off camera because you guys have seen this stuff a million times. But this is the bulk of the job, so if there's any questions or comments, please leave them below. Like and subscribe, and thank you very much.